Today I'm going to talk all about how we need to stop romanticizing certain lifestyles. Or rather, maybe it's important to romanticize them. I'm just going to say they piss me off. I'm going to tell you a story, but first I'm going to give you a couple examples so we are clear as to what I'm talking about. For instance, you can go to the state of Washington, and within certain cities, you'll find a contingent of very young people that make the claim that they are homeless by choice. They call themselves home free. You can see from the outside looking in, as a young idealistic person, that this is something that they want to live. This is a life they want to have. They want to intermingle with these people, and rarely but occasionally you will see a couple that's very young join this movement, right? And really it's not a movement. At the end of the day, they realize they are young people who haven't showered in a number of weeks, smell bad, their hair's all greasy, and they're not going anywhere in life. Of course, I imagine this changes for the vast majority of them, and if it doesn't, they are going to meet a very premature end. You also see this with hobos or people that call themselves transients. They make the claim that they're travelers, when in fact they're typically like going to another city for their next fix or the weather. They're homeless. Again, they'll say it's by choice, but oftentimes they have a drug problem or a mental health problem that hasn't really been addressed. Again, not a sustainable lifestyle, and it's going to end tragically and prematurely. You also see this with sovereign citizens. They're sick of the law of the land. They're going to make their own rules in that way and follow the law of the sovereign individual. Of course, this doesn't work out. They're going to get caught with something, and you see these hilarious videos on YouTube. But from the outside looking in, part of you might admire them. They are beckoning the call of the old law of the land, where us as patriots and new Americans had to go about their business in particular ways. That's none of your business. And they're tired of having a government that maybe overreaches in certain ways. And you see this with bikers, and this is where my story begins. I have a good friend. She's beautiful, a little bit younger than me, probably by 3 or 4 years, but she's been through it with a number of guys. I think she's jaded. I think maybe she feels used up. I think maybe she feels tired. But she met one guy that was a decent guy. I know him. He was a Marine. He was part of a motorcycle club, so on, etc. She was very much fell for this guy very quickly. I can imagine as a guy that might be a little overwhelming, especially for him. And I think this is what ultimately led to the downfall of their relationship to some degree. She's pretty overbearing. She's very excited about relationships, and she seems like she might be very needy in particular ways. It didn't work out. She was severely brokenhearted, and it hurt to see that because she was dating a good guy, and this guy would have taken care of her. It just didn't work out. But she definitely changed her in some ways. She became enamored suddenly with the bike culture. There's nothing wrong with that. I have friends that are a part of a motorcycle club. They do a lot of good with their life. They ride for a lot of just causes. They are very happy where they're at. They take care of business. They have very good lives. She became a part of that, and I think it was because she wanted her ex to know that, hey, this lifestyle, I'm a part of it now as well. She got her motorcycle's license, which is to be admired. She bought a motorcycle, and she started riding to some degree, but very infrequently. And she still rides infrequently. Hopefully that will change. But it just kind of seemed manufactured. It kind of seemed fake. It kind of seemed like, hey, I'm doing this in some way to get back to my back at my ex. He's gonna see that I'm legit. I'm the real deal, and he shouldn't have left a girl like me. Which may be the case. She is fantastic. Anyone would be very lucky to be with a girl that beautiful and that entertaining and that fun. But again, it just kind of seemed fake. It seems like manufactured. And ultimately, at the end of the day, she started only dating guys that rode motorcycles. This was actually part of her profile. So she wasn't giving like the normal average Joe the time of day. She wanted a guy who dressed like a biker, who acted like a biker, and she started to romanticize that lifestyle in her head. That's the point of the video. And it wasn't enough. She dated maybe a couple of them. It didn't work out. And she became increasingly brokenhearted and increasingly intertwining herself with this lifestyle. And she found the answer to her problem, and that was, at the end of the day, to go out with an outlaw, a one percenter. Don't get me wrong, I know a few one percenters. A lot of them are smarter than the average Joe. They have their laws of their outlaw gang. They go about their business, they mind their own business, and tend to be pretty cool if you just strike up a regular conversation with them. But within those groups also has a bunch of ignorant, low IQ, dirty jerks that utilize a woman as a means to their end. And she hooked up with one of these kind of guys. This guy, he's handsome, he has a cool bike, he looks cool in his biker gear. He looks like he's kind of out of a movie if you see him. And then you get to talk to him, and I don't understand how a girl could really be attracted to someone that's so dim-witted, unless they romanticize that outlaw lifestyle, which is like the extreme of the biker world. And this is exactly what this girl, my friend, has done. And I don't see people warning her. I think maybe out of fear or just out of respect, because they want to see her have that happiness that has eluded her for her adult life. But this guy, this bum, I meet him, and she's excited for us to meet. And she wants to talk to me, and she invites me into the bar because we were sitting on a patio, and you could see this guy so insecure and so like upset to some degree that she's talking to me. Like it kind of seems like he looks at me as a threat to some degree. And when I go outside with this guy and her, he starts telling me about himself, and he goes by the name Rush. That's not his real name. That's his gang name. And I'm like, oh, like Rush? Like you're into the band or something like that? I don't know what this means. I've never seen a grown-ass man go by a nickname. And he was like, no, they call me Rush because I rush to conclusions, and I always throw down with my hands with people all the time, man. I've gotten into so many fights, and I always win. He didn't say it like that, but that's kind of how he presented it. Don't mess with me. I'm nothing but trouble, and everyone knows it. And everyone wants me on their side when it comes to that. And he's very enamored with Viking culture and fighting. And he's not a trained fighter, but he's one of those guys who says, all I see is red at the end of the day. And it's true. Street fights often end according to whomever throws the first punch. But I've been training in martial arts my entire life. And granted, now I'm entirely out of shape. A heavy smoker. I have probably a pending surgery or two. But I used to train a lot, and there's a huge difference between someone who trains arts like Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and a normal guy. You just know it. You can see it a lot of times. If you see like a local fight at your bar, man, these guys don't know how to throw a punch. Their head's up in the air, their chin is out. It's just one punch, one kill. And if the fight, God forbid, goes on longer than 45 seconds, the guys are not going to have that endurance. Whereas if you train, you know how to protect yourself, keep your chin down, and you know how to conserve your energy. You're very efficient in that way. And you laugh at people that come into the gym and make these claims about being a street fighter. And you just kind of have your way with them, and they end up ultimately quitting because they refuse to be humbled. They want to live this fantasy in their head. And she is totally infatuated and thinks it's hot that her man can fight. When in fact it's ignorant. This guy's in his 40s, and he's talking about fighting like someone who, chances are, might not even put up a fight because they see by the way he's dressed that he is a one percenter and he has friends around him, so on, etc. And believe you me, there's guys, especially when they get a little older, that refuse to fight, man. They will take a shot or two if need be. They'll try to de-escalate. They'll try to get, X, Y, and Z person involved in it. And I can imagine if you got hit by like a one percenter, well, you really don't want to mess with that, right? Because the consequences could be a little bit more than what you're accustomed to. It's not a regular fight. You might not want to get the cops involved, so on, etc. It could be a headache. But I see this guy and he's poisoning her. And on social media, you see her with an abundance of pictures of both of them kissing, smiling, so on, etc. And they both have these fake, huge smiles on their face, especially her. That's not how she typically smiles, and she's trying to make that portrayal like, I'm so happy right now, everything has fallen in place, I have my man, my outlaw boyfriend, he's a protector, he's a provider, he's everything I could have ever wanted in a guy, and I want everyone to know that. But her friends are not buying that. I know this guy's a bum. He has a very, very low IQ. He's never going to be successful. Not really. He sells copious amounts of drugs. It's not sustainable. This is going to end badly. There's not going to be a happy ending here. But she believes thoroughly that there is. She has a car, but she handed it over to him, more or less. They installed a breathalyzer because he has conditions he needs to meet so he can gain back a regular license without restrictions. She did that for him. Do you know how much of a pain in the butt it is to have a breathalyzer in your car? She let him move in with her. She has a nice condominium. He doesn't pay anything. I know that. She's going to say he does, but I know this guy doesn't pay anything. She has a jacket which says that she is the property of this guy, and I know a lot of bikers don't mean it that way. It's just a part of their culture, but this guy really does treat her as property, and not in a loving way, in a pretty brutal kind of way. She's giving up money for this guy. I know she pays for this guy. I know a lot of things, and you could tell just by the way they interact. She's very fiercely independent. She stands on business. She's always been this way, but you could see her starting to coalesce to what this guy says. What he says goes. He's the leader. She's the follower. And that's unfortunate. She has a daughter. She has friends that see her becoming this kind of like wimpy lady. And when he stepped away for a moment, she was more or less asking me what I thought about him. I wasn't honest. I really didn't know, but I thought he was off. I thought he looked like a psychopath, the way he looked at you, the way he acted, his tendencies. Who starts conversations? How are you so insecure that the first thing you need to do is borderline threaten another guy about your fisticuff ability? He seemed off. He didn't seem right. And we were both tipsy at this point, but one of the first things she said, which was telling, was that this guy doesn't beat her. He doesn't beat me, That tells me he does beat you. From what I see, I can tell you support him, but you're romanticizing this current lifestyle. She posted that they went to some outlaw biker gathering, and this was a nice like Daytona Bike Week or Sturgis, is that what it's called? It wasn't organized, it was a mess, and you could see from the variety of pictures that these were a bunch of idiots, man, hanging out together at a camping ground, a boatload of them, in a muddy, gross campground with like some porta potties, and it just looked nasty. It was muddy. Everyone looked like they needed a shower. They looked very ignorant, pure white trash, very unattractive physically. And it seemed like a lot of them probably had very low IQs. No one would want to go to a place like this unless these are your people. And this group, from what I saw, are people that most normal, well-adjusted people don't want to hang out with, because it's that gross. It's that like low key. But she like romanticized it and said like, oh my god, I've seen stuff that I can't even report about. They've been so like naughty, blah blah blah. And like she has pictures of girls that are borderline naked, and these girls should really have multiple layers of clothes on them because they're just gross and fat and no muscle. Just nastiness. But you know, to these guys, they're probably hot as hell. And I see my friend, and she looks so beautiful in these pictures, and with this fake gleaming smile with her boyfriend. She posts regularly about how her boyfriend is learning and growing, and she admires that, and she understands that he's been through so much, but he comes out on top always. Again, that's a red flag. Why are you learning and growing and as a grown-ass man? Right? Like, she's just using that as a justification to say like, hey, that's why I'm with this guy. We're becoming as one. We are learning from each other. It reminds me of James Soroka. You remember that guy? He used to always say, I'm learning and I'm growing. We're growing together. Look up James Soroka. But that's like the vibe I'm getting from this relationship. Um, and you won't see her at her normal hangouts. She's no longer there, really. And when she is, she's not the same person. And that's a tragedy, to see a girl so beautiful, so strong, so independent, so smart, so interesting, so much fun, turn into this kind of like zombie. And she does it because she romanticizes this lifestyle, the outlaw motorcycle lifestyle. And all I see is a bum that has latched on and used up a girl. She is the end. She's a means to his end. I hope their relationship ends horribly. I hope she is okay, though. I hope that guy gets put in his place. I hope he gets arrested. I hope he goes to jail. Um, just pathetic. Just pathetic.